All right, let's just dive right in. We're going to take a journey into a world that honestly feels like it's breaking all the rules. A place where even totally normal classical particles can get linked up in this deep, kind of mysterious way. And no, this isn't sci fi. It's all from a new paper looking at something that just sounds impossible: classical entanglement. So here's the central question, the real head scratcher. We always think of entanglement, that spooky action at a distance, as something that only belongs in the super weird world of quantum mechanics. But what if two perfectly ordinary particles, just jiggling around randomly, could form that same kind of deep connected link? Is that even possible? Well, the concept we're talking about here is called Brownian entanglement. Now, let's be super clear. This is not the quantum spooky action thing. It's a really powerful statistical correlation that we can actually measure. Think of it like two dancers, right? Their movements are so perfectly in sync that if you know what one's going to do next, you instantly know the other's move, even if they're not touching. That's the kind of profound connection we're looking at, just on a microscopic scale. So, how in the world do you even study this? Well, scientists basically created a tiny little stage for these particles. The whole setup uses two microscopic particles that are physically linked, and each one is sitting in its own trap. You can picture these traps as like tiny laser tweezers that can tighten or loosen their grip whenever the scientists want them to. Okay, to crack this case, they needed a detector, and that's this thing called the entanglement witness. It's a mathematical tool, but you can really just think of it as a Geiger counter for entanglement. It looks at two things at once: how closely the particles move together versus how much they're just randomly jiggling apart. And if that witness value, W, drops below a certain line in the sand, this 4T threshold, bingo, we've got an entanglement. So to figure out what really sparks this connection, the researchers set up a contest between four different methods or protocols for messing with those traps. These are our suspects. We've got two symmetric protocols where both traps do the same thing, either both expand or both shrink together. Then we've got two asymmetric ones where one trap expands while the other one shrinks. The big question is, which one of these is going to be the secret recipe for entanglement? And that brings us to our first major clue. And wow, is it a big one. It turns out how you drive these particles, the actual choreography of the traps, matters a lot. And the number one rule? It's all about symmetry. And this image just says it all, doesn't it? Take a look at these graphs. For the symmetric protocols, that's EE in panel A and SS in panel D, the entanglement witness just plummets way, way below that entanglement threshold. Is a huge effect. But now look at the asymmetric cases, B and C. They barely even nudge the needle. The difference is just night and day. Symmetry is, without a doubt, a huge part of the answer. So why? What makes symmetry so powerful? It really just comes down to balance. When you drive the particles symmetrically, you keep their random jiggling in perfect sync. Their variance stays the same. Think of it like keeping two scales perfectly level. This balanced state is the ideal condition for entanglement to pop up. But the second you drive them asymmetrically, you throw those scales way off. And this creates a mathematical penalty that just actively fights against entanglement. The secret sauce, it seems, is keeping that jiggle in perfect harmony. But wait, there's more. Symmetry isn't the entire story. The next piece of this puzzle is all about the strength of the connection, the coupling, between the particles. See, it can't be too weak, but it also can't be too strong. It has to be just right. To find this Goldilocks zone, the team built a predictive model. It's pretty clever. First, they figured out the average stiffness of the traps for each of the four protocols. Then, they modeled the entanglement efficiency as this delicate balance between how strongly the particles are coupled together and how stable the whole system is. By finding the peak of that balance, they could predict the one single best interaction strength, the geopt, for any given protocol. And this is where the plot really thickens. Just look at this data. The arrows on the graph show what the model predicted. For the two asymmetric protocols, B and C, and for the symmetric shrinking one, D, the predictions are absolutely perfect. They nail it. The model points right to that just right coupling strength. But then, look at panel A. That's our symmetric expansion protocol. The model says there should be an optimum right around 1.18, but the real data shows that the entanglement just keeps getting stronger and stronger as you crank up the interaction. The model just completely falls apart. So, what is going on here? This brings us to the final clue, the big twist in our story, and it's probably the most interesting part. See, the model failing wasn't a mistake. It was actually pointing to a much deeper truth about how these systems work. A truth that isn't just about averages, but about timing. So here's the puzzle we need to solve. Why does this one specific protocol, the symmetric expansion, seem to break the rules? Why does it just get better and better the more you connect the particles? Totally defying that prediction that there should be a sweet spot. What makes it so special?
And the answer, it turns out, is beautiful and simple. It's all about when the system is at its most stable. The protocols that start out under the most stable conditions, well, they have a massive, game-changing advantage.
Okay, let's break this down. The EE protocol, the one that defied our model, it starts with the traps at their absolute stiffest. That's when the system is most stable. And this allows strong correlations to form and get banked right at the start, like putting money away in a savings account. Those banked correlations are so strong, they actually survive even when the traps get weaker later on. The other protocols, they start when the traps are weak and unstable, so they never get the chance to build up that initial savings account. The key insight is this: front-loading stability lets you build a reserve of entanglement that pays dividends later. So, after following all the clues, the symmetry, the Goldilocks zone, and this final twist about stability, the case is pretty much closed. We've gone from a total mystery to a clear set of instructions for how to engineer these bizarre, powerful connections in the chaotic world of tiny particles. And it all really boils down to 3 simple design principles. Number 1, use symmetry. It's just flat out more efficient. Number 2, find that optimal coupling strength, that predictable Goldilocks value. And number 3, the real secret weapon. Front load your stability. Start strong to bank those correlations right at the beginning. What this research really gives us is a rule book, a way to start controlling all this emergent behavior down at the nanoscale. And that's a huge deal for designing things like microscopic information engines or figuring out how to control energy flow in molecular machines. So the question this leaves us with is a really big one. Now that we actually have the rules, what kind of incredible tiny machines could we build if we finally learn how to control the dance of chaos itself?